You may have heard on May 20th of this year that the Office of the Comptroller of the Currency published a final rule that revises the Community Reinvestment Act regulations. So why is this final rule important? Well, one reason is that these new regulations are effective on October 1st of this year. That's less than 2 months from right now. Now, there's no reason to panic. In fact, there's 2 reasons why you don't need to panic. First, there is more time than is immediately apparent. The regs are effective on October 1st, but if you're a small or intermediate bank, you have until January 1st, 2023 to complete implementation. And if you're a large bank, you have until January 1st, 2024 to complete the job. By the way, asset thresholds for large, intermediate, and small banks have changed. We'll be covering that in the program. Another reason why you don't need to panic, at least not all of you don't need to panic, is this is an OCC regulation. It applies to national banks. If you're a state member bank regulated by the Federal Reserve or a state non-member bank regulated by the FDIC, you don't have new CRA regulations yet. The OCC jumped the gun a little bit. The FDIC and the Federal Reserve are working on regs. They're going to do something, and they're going to do something very similar to what the OCC did, but we don't have their regs yet. So there's time. There's time there as well. Now, I want to explain that CRA is going to be changing a lot. I mean, we've got a 2-hour program to explain it all to you, but I've already mentioned that the asset thresholds are changing. What used to be a small bank is smaller than it used to be. We used to have a category of banks called intermediate small banks. Well, that term it went completely away in an earlier draft of the reg. It's back now, but instead of intermediate small, they're just called intermediate banks. And then, of course, we have large banks at the large end of the scale, and large banks are larger than they were before. So that's changing, and of course, we'll be covering that. How you define an assessment area has changed. There's now 2 ways you go about doing it. There's a facility-based method. It's very similar to what you've done for years. But now there's a second way that some of you'll have to look at it. It's a deposit-based effort. If you have more than 50% of your deposits outside of your facility-based assessment area, then you're going to have to define 1 or more deposit-based assessment areas. That's a pretty big change. The whole evaluation process is changing, and it's frankly becoming more transparent than it was before. That's a good thing. You'll have much more ability to self-evaluate. In fact, to a large extent, you will be required to self-evaluate and submit your self-evaluation to your regulator on an annual basis. We also have a bunch of new concepts. We have a concept of CRA Desert. We have a qualifying activities value that you're going to have to calculate. There's a CRA Evaluation Measure, which is a formula that you'll have to become familiar with. And once you understand how it works, you can play around with that a little bit. You can input your current data and based on that, determine what your measure is going to be. And that's a large part of your CRA rating. You can also play around with it and say, if we open another branch and it's a low-income neighborhood, what does that do to our CRA evaluation measure? Or if we can generate a whole lot new, more qualifying activities, how will that improve our ratio? If we want to get an outstanding rating, how many dollars worth of qualifying activities will we have to have? I mean, all of that you can calculate once you understand the CRA evaluation measure. There's also distribution tests that are new and important as well. So we're going to cover all this and a whole lot more. On August the 25th, we have a 2-hour webinar. It's entitled The OCC's Final CRA Rule. We hope all of you can join us. We'll love to see you there. There'll be some information that you'll see below that tells you how you go about registering for this program. Thank you.